Janad Trust here. So the Trump tax bill has passed. Elon Musk is mad. In this video, I'm going to break down what this means for you and I, what this means from a global perspective, how the Democrats may respond. So before I do that, hit that subscribe button and the like button. I appreciate you. So the Trump tax bill, that was formerly known as the One Beautiful Bill, right? It basically just has passed the Senate and now is headed to the House for the final vote. So this legislation is one of the most significant domestic policy moves of Trump's second term and will have it'll have wide ranging effects on nearly all Americans. Now, the key points of this bill is the tax cuts, right? The bill makes the 2017 Trump tax cuts permanent, basically preventing their scheduled expiration at the end of this year. Basically, what this means is lower individual tax rates and nearly doubled standard deduction will continue. So most households will see their tax bills decrease with an average reduction of about $2,900, but the largest benefits go to high income earners. The top 20% of earners, that's basically the people who are making over $217,000 per year, would get about 60% of their tax benefits with an average cut of $12,500. Middle income households would see an average of a cut of about $1,800, while the lowest income households, basically that's under $35,000, would see only about $150. There's a child tax credit that's a part of this too. So the maximum child tax credit increases to $2,200 per child, up from $2,100. It's $2,200 per child. That is basically up from $2,000. I'm sorry. And that will be adjusted for inflation. So the credit is also made permanent. There's a standard deduction for seniors. So seniors will get a $6,000 boost to their standard deduction from 2025 to 2028, phasing out the higher earners. Trump accounts for newborns, right? Every American infant born from 2025 to 2028 will receive a $1,000 government-funded investment account with parents able to add up to $5,000 annually. The withdrawals basically are allowed at age 18. There are tax breaks for tipped workers. Employees in tipped positions can deduct up to $25,000 in tip income from federal taxes through 2028. There's a vehicle tax deduction, so that's up to $10,000 in loan interest. For new American-made vehicles, that's deductible, right? But EV tax credits, that's up to $7,500, will expire at the end of September. There are spending cuts and social programs that will see a change. So Medicaid and food stamps. The bill includes about 1 to 1.2 trillion in cuts, mostly to Medicaid and food stamps, that's the SNAP, by imposing new work requirements and tightening eligibility. So an estimated 11 to 12 million people could lose Medicaid coverage. Able-bodied adults aged 19 to 64, including some parents and older Americans, must work or participate in training for at least 80 hours a month to keep Medicaid. In regards to education, there are new limits that are placed on federal student loans for graduate students and parents, with fewer deferment and forgiveness options. There's green energy, so billions in green energy tax incentives are repealed, with basically which could reduce investment in wind and solar projects, and EV credits are eliminated early. Other changes that are worth noting is the immigration. So the bill increases funding for border security and deportations, paid for in part by new or higher fees on immigrants. Eligibility for federal benefits is narrowed for many non-citizens. University endowments is another notable change. The tax on large private university endowments is raised, affecting schools like Harvard and Yale. They have that beef. Harvard, Yale have that beef with Donald Trump. This is just more to it, right? There's an impact on the national debt. So the Congressional Budget Office estimates the bill will add 3.3 to 4.5 trillion to the national debt over a decade, primarily due to the permanent extension of the tax cuts. Senate Republicans dispute this figure using alternative accounting methods, criticizing basically as magic math. So Elon Musk, he's not just going to let this just ride out, right? Elon Musk is upset at the Trump tax bill, right? Again, that's it's formerly known as the Big Beautiful Bill, because, there's a massive increase in national debt. So Musk has repeatedly condemned the bill for what he calls reckless spending and crushingly unsustainable debt. He points to projections that the bill would increase the national debt by, basically between 2.4 trillion and 3.3 trillion over the next decade, calling it the biggest debt increase in history and a disgusting abomination that will burden America's citizens, right? Cuts to social programs is another reason why he's hot. He's mad. The legislation includes significant cuts to healthcare and food assistance programs, such as Medicaid, which Musk and others argue will harm vulnerable Americans. There's a damage to future-focused industries. So Musk, he's the CEO of Tesla and SpaceX. He argues that the bill gives handouts to industries of the past while severely damaging industries of the future. So he specifically criticized new taxes on wind and solar projects, warning that these provisions would destroy millions of jobs in America and cause irreparable harm to our energy and technology sectors. Now, there's a political fallout as well, and the call for a new party. So Musk has gone so far as to call the bill politically suicide or political suicide for the Republican Party, and has advocated for forming a new political party, claiming the bill reveals bipartisan apathy toward fiscal responsibility and the welfare of ordinary citizens. There is a personal and strategic disappointment that Musk has towards Trump, you can say. He was previously supporting of Trump, right? And served as an advisor, reportedly become frustrated after failing to secure favorable treatment for his companies in the bill. This personal disappointment contributed to his public break with Trump and the administration. There is a public opinion and business impact. So polls show most Americans share Musk's concerns, believing, the bill benefits the wealthy and corporations rather than ordinary families. The feud also, caused volatility in Tesla's stock price, highlighting the broader economic and political stakes. So the vote on, the Trump bill was so close because of the deep divisions within the Republican Party and unified opposition from Democrats. So the bill passed the Senate by basically a narrow margin, 51-50 margin, with Vice President J.D. Vance casting the tie-breaking vote. Why it was so close? You have Republican, defections, right? 3 Republican senators. You have Rand Paul from Kentucky, Thom Tillis from North Carolina, and Susan Collins from Maine joined all Democrats in voting against the bill. Their objections, it varied, but Paul opposed the bill due to the concerns about the adding of trillions to the deficit, while Tillis and Collins were alarmed by proposed cuts to Medicaid and other social safety net programs, right? There was a contentious atmosphere in the provision. So the bill included trillions of dollars in tax cuts, a significant increase in military and border security funding, and large cuts to Medicaid, that's the SNAP, right? Food assistance and clean energy investments. So these provisions spark opposition from both fiscal conservatives worried about the deficit and debt ceiling increases, and moderates, which were concerned about the impact on healthcare and social programs. There was a slim GOP majority, so with only a narrow majority in the Senate, Republican leaders could afford to lose no more than 3 votes. So this made every holdout critical and led to intense last-minute negotiations, including amendments and incentives to win over wavering senators like Lisa Murkowski. She's from Alaska. So the bill was controversial and unpopular with many voters, and some senators faced political risks either from their own party or from constituents, right? For example, Senator Tillis announced he would not seek re-election after Trump threatened to campaign against him for his opposition. The Congressional Budget Office estimated the bill would increase the federal deficit by $3.3 trillion over the next decade and leave nearly 12 million more Americans without health coverage, raising further concerns among moderates and deficit hawks. The newly passed Trump bill, often, again, the big beautiful bill, carries significant global implications across climate, economic, and geopolitical domains. The bill slashes tax incentives and funding for clean energy technologies, effectively repealing much of the 2022 Inflation Reduction Act, which was the cornerstone of the previous administration's climate action. Billions of dollars in climate-related investments are rescinded, and the U.S. is moving to withdraw from the Paris Agreement, joining only Iran, Libya, and Yemen as non-participants. So this shift signals to the international community a major rollback in U.S. climate leadership, likely reducing, global pressure for emissions cuts and potentially slowing international climate action. So the U.S. is historically the largest emitter and remains a top oil and gas producer. So its policy, its choices, right, have outsized influence and global negotiations and momentum of the Paris Agreement. The bill extends and expands tax cuts from the 2017 Tax Cuts and the Jobs Act, with a focus on middle and working class deductions, but also delivers substantial benefits to the wealthiest Americans. So to offset the lost revenue, the bill imposes deep cuts to social safety net programs like Medicaid and SNAP, potentially leaving millions without healthcare or food assistance. So the Congressional Budget Office estimates, I don't know, guys. What do you guys think about this 3.3 trillion over the next decade, right? This has already prompted international bond investors to diversify away from U.S. treasuries, reflecting concerns about fiscal sustainability and the stability of the dollar as the global reserve currency, okay? The legislation boosts defense spending by billions, including $25 billion for a new missile defense system, $45.6 billion for the border wall, and significant investments in nuclear modernization and shipbuilding. So these moves may be interpreted globally as a reinforcement of U.S. military posture and border security priorities, potentially affecting diplomatic relations and regional security dynamics. The bill institutes new and increased fees for asylum seekers and migrants and allocates substantial funding to border enforcement and detention, signaling a hardline stance on immigration that could strain relations with neighboring countries and international human rights organizations, right? So that's what I have for you today. Please take a moment right now to hit that subscribe button and the like button. I appreciate your viewership. Stay safe and see you on the next video.